I'm going to talk about a team that I worked with for 13 years in total. I recently left them this year. So, you still hear me? Right? Yeah. Okay. It's kind of unusual in that the team was kept together for a long time. Over this sort of 10-year period, I'm going to talk about 50% of the team was the same as we finished and when they started. Nobody really messed with the team. There were no takeovers or managers didn't come in and split them up or anything. And we were largely left to our own devices on how we wanted to work after a while. So it's a kind of a sort of case study on what happens if you leave a team alone, really. I joined the team in 2001. The company had just gone from a big sort of boom. It was the end of the 2001 bubble. It was shrinking a lot. They'd employed loads of people. When I first worked there, I was on the team had about 10 people. As a team leader, business analyst, and they would assign work individually to each developers. You kind of get, here you go, Tom, here's your work for the next month or whatever. We've estimated it'll take you this long. We'll come and talk to you in a month, see how you're going, kind of thing. It was pretty dire. Towards the end of that month, you'd do a code review. It's like the longest thing. And the team leader would make you print the code out, which was kind of frightening. And he'd kind of go through with a red pen, and where it wasn't indented correctly, he'd kind of mark it out. It was pretty grim. There was also, going back to Mary's talk, the cycle of when we released. I think we were supposed to release around twice a year. After about 6 months of development, they'd be like, okay, we'll release and let's go into do a bit of integration and testing, and that would take another 6 months. And there'd be 6 months there waiting for bugs coming in and more features. And so that was pretty much 50% on that scale. So pretty awful. And it was hugely frustrating for everyone. I think personally, I just kind of went into a bubble and just coded, didn't talk to people very much. I was kind of really frustrated, not sure why I stayed, but I kind of thought it was worth sticking with for a while. Right, let's see. I'm not going to do many slides. I did this talk before, and I had loads of slides, and I ripped them all out, so hopefully this will work. This is a kind of thing I call rings. It's like a little JavaScript thing, and I try to model what's happening and what the effects of that are. So obviously this poem, we're sort of working alone, we're assigned work, it was sort of documents. We were kept busy as in we'd work pushed on us as opposed to any sort of pull. There was testing right at the end, and there were meetings which were basically status updates. What are you working on, Tom? X. Good. Next. So pretty grim. What does it lead to? Frustration, defensiveness, blaming each other for what's going wrong. Pretty blind because you couldn't see what anyone else was doing. Working in a bubble and stagnation. And they were kind of just adding more developers trying to make this process go faster. And obviously it wasn't. So about a couple of years, 2 or 3 years later, the team lead left. Around the guy that was doing these code reviews. Around this time, there was sort of some new technology. The company had shrunk down a lot due to its sort of imminent failure. And as a team, we kind of got together and said, well, what are we going to do about this new technology? And it's the first time we actually started talking to each other. And we were still being assigned work, but we actually started to see, well, how could we improve the process a bit? It was 2003, we were sort of aware of XP and that kind of thing. We started looking at unit testing and continuous integration. Now, I'm not going to say we suddenly overnight changed to this fantastic team, but we became aware of what was going on. So I think all of these reds were still there, really, but we were at least starting to talk to each other and starting to grow a little bit as a team, although still working individually. So this went on for a few more years. I think we were sort of steadily improving at this point. The process was still the same, though, still being assigned the work. And I think in 2007, after a kind of failed attempt at offshoring to kind of get someone else to do this work we couldn't do, the the CTO sat down with me and said, well, what can we do? How can we go faster? And I kind of laughed, but said, well, there's this thing called Scrum that maybe we could do an experiment with. So I suggested we took four of us from the team, 4 or 5 from the team, give us 4 weeks. And I said to him, you tell us what you think we should be able to deliver in this 4 weeks, at the end of the 4 weeks. And came back with a list of things. And then we went off and did a sprint planning. And we thought we could do maybe double that. We went off and did the experiment. And at the end of the 4 weeks, I think we'd doubled again what we thought we could do. There was a huge change. And I think pretty much solely that change was just down to the team actually working together, deciding how we were going to work, starting to work really collaboratively. It was a really nice experience. Everyone was suddenly, empowered. Feel, yeah, we can just work out how we're going to work. So there's a big change at this point. This bubble that I had been in before as a programmer was now kind of extending, and I think it was a team bubble. We kind of worked. We were still kind of worked as a team, but this team bubble was certainly a lot better than just being a bubble on its own. So this went on for a few years. It was pretty successful. After a few years, it became a bit predictable. I think we dropped down to 3-week or 2-week sprints by this time. Every 2 weeks, we'd say we're going to deliver this, and we'd deliver it. And it was we kind of knew what we were going to do. We were working on the same product. This whole period, it's on the same product, continually working on the same product. And I found it a bit predictable. And we'd sort of lost some of the creativity, I think, by people valuing how predictable we were. So we thought we needed a change. Kanban was coming on the scheme, so why not try another way to improve our process? We've been doing good retrospectives and improving technically, but I don't think we were really looking at the flow and how that was working. So we started experimenting with Kanban. We started where we were. We were kind of already visualizing on a board, but we started limiting work in progress, and we could see pretty clearly where the blockages were coming. They weren't really coming from inside the team, our technical things, what we were doing, they were coming from outside the team. We started talking a bit more to these people, the business owners, the various other people in the system. And that was really good. I think our kind of bubble started to grow through that. We kind of didn't just think of ourselves as the team, thinking ourselves more as the company by this point. It sort of brought us all closer as a company. There was obviously a kind of limit to what we could do. We're still just the team, but it certainly extended our bubble. I think around this time also we made a bit of a change. One thing about having a team together for a long time is all growing old and starting to have families. The company was central London based, so having a family house in London wasn't particularly practical for us. So one of the developers suggested, I want to move to Dorset, which, if you know England, is a beautiful kind of countryside, escape to the country type place. And like, how's that going to work? And he's like, you employ me in the same way, and I will make sure that I'm as effective in Dorset as I am working in London. And people were a bit kind of cynical. We're like, well, that's the deal if you think you can do it. And we did. And then after that, more and more of us started moving out. And now the team rarely meets in the office in London and works all around the UK. The remote working we did isn't, people think working from home, people say to me, working from home, you must be so kind of lonely, how do you motivate yourself? But it's kind of not like that at all. I got up in the morning, I kind of be straight onto Skype, chat to another developer, maybe solve a few problems we've been thinking about overnight. We used to do a 9:30 stand-up, and people would actually stand up at their desks in their office or living room or wherever they were. And it was fun because rather than, the commute was awful, that was a bit grim, it would be like, what have you done this morning? What did you do last night? Kind of the pre-stand-up chat was good, and then people were generally a lot happier. We go through a stand-up just in a normal, agile way, and then afterwards we were pair programming pretty much all the time now. I think as we moved remotely, there was more of a reason to pair program because you are just on your own, and it was great I think pair programming is fantastic, and you learn so much faster when you're with somebody else. And obviously the quality of the code is so much better when there's constantly somebody else there with you. It's so much better than a code review at the end where it's kind of too late. You don't want to change it by that time. You want to change it as you're working together. And there's a really nice cycle of, we'd sort of pair together for maybe an hour, maybe less than an hour, maybe 45 minutes. Say, okay, let's go and get a coffee, grab a coffee, we'd have a 10-minute break, maybe walk around the garden a bit, think about the problems we're working on, really come back refreshed, back into the pair, solving the problems, keep moving. Yeah, so that was really, really nice, and worked well. I think we should probably change some of these things now. So I'll keep looking at it. So we're not working alone anymore, which is great. We were pairing all the time. We're not assigned work, we're pulling. So I think this makes a huge difference, picking your own stories off the board as they come up. There weren't really any documents, but we did listen to each other a lot more, and we were chatting to the business a lot more and understanding their problems. Although, I guess I'll come to this later, one of the frustrating things is we never really got talking directly to the customers as a team. It was always a proxy through the business. I think that had quite a detrimental effect. So rather than keeping busy, we always kept with our retrospectives, I think every couple of weeks. And good time to reflect, always good retrospectives. We'd often actually come into this, we still had this London office, we'd come in every 2 weeks, spend a day together, mostly down the pub, to be honest, but it was a time to reflect on what we were doing. And also to see each other face to face and hand over produce. Because we're all living out in the country, people would come in with eggs from the chickens and hand them across to other people and give people baby clothes and stuff like that, because we had kids. Testing at the end, I mean, we're pretty much on it with TDD now. It certainly took a long while to learn. It's certainly not an easy thing to change. And a lot less meetings. I think once we went to Kanban, we pretty much scrapped the sprint planning. We weren't estimating anymore. Business had sort of stopped asking for estimates. They kind of knew, we were working together a long time, they knew that if there was a problem, we'd tell them about it. If it was going to take much longer than it was of value, we'd scream about it. So yeah, no estimates. And I can't even read that one. Spontaneous dialogue, yeah. So we'd just be talking to each other a lot more. Just on a group chat, kind of type in, I've got an idea about this. Anyone want to join? Yeah, let's do a voice call or a video call, and suddenly people would come in voluntarily, invited to join, and that's really how problems got solved. So just like you would in an office when you're in a kind of team room, somebody might shout, "What can we do about this?" You do it virtually in exactly the same way. So yeah, remote working. I think it can work with Agile. What am I doing for time? I'm shooting through it, aren't I? Sorry. Leaving. I left this year. This glorious, wonderful experience I've just described. Kind of partly because it had been 13 years, and partly because I got to the point where there were problems on the team that I felt there was not, after years of nagging, there was nothing I was going to be able to do about. We were always protected from the customers. And I was sort of lucky enough I sort of volunteered to go and spend some time with one of our customers. And when I spoke to them, I found it so depressing that all the things that we thought had been the problems for all these years, all the things that we had to solve, started talking to the customer, and they were irrelevant. The customer had so many different problems, and these weren't getting communicated through. I really think it's vital that developers actually get out to talk to customers, as many as possible. It's such so worthwhile. We also, I think, the web's really changed, and it's kind of, you need to have a designer on the team now, and I could never convince the company to bring designers in, which was really frustrating. We're spending so much time with bad visual UX design. So I've gone out on my own. I spent 2 or 3 weeks kind of finding new clients. Just when I got busy enough, my old company came back to me going, "We need you to help us out as a freelancer." So now I've got loads of work. But I need to start getting some help, I think. But it's been really, that's kind of really exciting. The hierarchy that was there before that was kind of blocking doing anything about is now kind of evaporated. It's just me. And I got responsibility for these decisions. So this motivation that you have being sort of empowered is doubled when I'm working for myself. So I kind of believe in the freelance way of working, but I need to start working collaboratively again. Okay, I've got a few more slides. During this time, I wrote a Diary of a Scrum Master, which is a blog. Maybe some people have read. Has anyone read my blog? No. 130 posts in 8 years and nobody's read them. So I sort of mostly talk about my frustrations, I guess. Bob's read my blog. That's nice. So I just sort of picked some sort of quotes from the blogs through the years. People instinctively feel ineffectiveness, and they signal with frustration and despondency. If people are there frustrated, you can see it and you can do something about it. It's that simple. We just need to attend to those people's needs, which I'm going to get to in a minute. And fear's the improvement killer. I think you don't kind of feel deep fear all the time, but it's kind of there and it's stopping us improving. And it comes from hierarchy, and it comes from people not really talking to each other properly. But people don't say, I'm scared. They say, oh, we can't do this because, or this because of this. These untrue limiting assumptions. And that's really one of the killers to progress. So once we start talking, this all gets a lot easier. As I said, attend to people's needs. This is Bob's, who's talking tomorrow morning, I think. This has really helped me sort of all the time when I'm kind of thinking, this is a really complicated problem, what can we do about this? The answer's generally as simple as attending to the folks' needs. You know, going and talking. Right, this is another one. Present a good team with problems. I'm not going to look up there. And they'll thrive on finding solutions. Ask them to implement your solution, and they'll only find problems. I kind of see this repeatedly with people coming with requirements. You know, this is our solution to the problem. Can you implement it? And it never ends well, to be honest. You then have to kind of go back and say, well, what's the actual problem we're trying to solve? And often that can't be communicated very well. So I think we need to work on that and actually working on problems or what we're trying to achieve rather than just implementing solutions. And expose your dev team to the chaos of the outside world and ask them to find opportunities in the diversity. I guess this goes back to Mary talking about this 15% time at 3M. I mean, but also getting out to the customers and coming up with some ideas. It's so frustrating that you have companies where everybody's got ideas and those people doing the work are probably generating more ideas as they do the work, but they're largely being ignored, and the ideas are often just coming from management and being sort of passed down with requirements kind of thing. But I think if you can really expose everybody to the opportunities that are out there, you can make life a lot easier. I can't stop looking at that screen, it's just so big. Right, what am I doing? That's me, I've just shot through that, haven't I? But yeah. I sort of wrote a book about a year ago about this, Programmer's Guide to People. So kind of if you want to hear more about this, it's the, it's kind of a book of, Bob's read it, frustration. What you might be to do about it. And this is my new company, Lean Tomato. So I'm kind of looking to work with other people on it as well. So yeah, that is me.